There was a point many years ago when I was one of the biggest Assassin's Creed fans around. From the original Assassin's Creed all the way up through the many subsequent entries in the series, I was Ubisoft's biggest fan. What I'm not a big fan of, though, is that snake. Snakes suck. It turns out, though, that Ubisoft is in some financial trouble and has been cutting games from their development lineup. Part of the reason for this is that they are losing the customers that were in love with their old games, but don't recognize them anymore, like me. And they're also spending entirely too much time and money developing them due to their massive size and scope. There was a day when I would just buy anything that Ubisoft put out. And then one day, I just realized I don't like Assassin's Creed anymore, and I just stopped buying their games. But I'm hopeful for the future, because with what we've been hearing about Assassin's Creed Mirage, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video, I'm hopeful they can bring players like me, and maybe you, back to the game. Over the years, Assassin's Creed and plenty of Ubisoft's other titles have deviated from the gaming formula that I once knew and loved, and they morphed it into a monstrous, time and life-consuming commitment if you want to play their newest game. Not only that, but many people feel that they also changed the gameplay structure in its entirety, and it was for the worse. So let's start off talking about the original Assassin's Creed. Yes, the one that started it all. Beginning your journey as Desmond and discovering the life of Altair is amazing. The game had some issues, some bugs, things that needed worked out, but overall it was good enough to bring us 15 years and counting worth of games. The key to Assassin's Creed was that you were actually an assassin. I don't mean that you were part of some ancient brotherhood of assassins that fought the Templar Order, even though you were, and that theme has at least loosely tied into all the games. I mean that you were sneaking around on rooftops. You were jumping off of tall buildings into hay bales. You were blending in with the crowd. You were being a badass all around with lots of cool gadgets and a nearly unstoppable force of will. And you were killing people. Did I mention there was stealth? Because yes, stealth in a game about assassins is a little bit of a crazy concept, I understand, but there was stealth. Assassin's Creed 2 came out and completely hooked me through and through. Now, a lot of people disagree with me when I say this, but my favorite assassin always has been, and probably always will be, Ezio. But I'm curious, who's your favorite assassin? Let me know down in the comments, tell me why, and we'll talk about it there. Assassin's Creed 2 was so great and resonated with so many people that they didn't stop there. And maybe at times in Ubisoft's past this has been to their detriment, but in this instance they created 2 direct sequels to it in the forms of Brotherhood and Revelations. By the time that Assassin's Creed 3 came along, I was so attached to Ezio and the gameplay in the 3 games he starred in that I was somewhat hesitant to play Assassin's Creed 3, or for that matter, ever even consider going back to the original Assassin's Creed. Now, there's some specific reasons why I think the games are different now than they used to be, and that includes the amount of time they take to play, the sizes of the map and the scopes of the game, and the actual gameplay itself. Let's talk first about the time they take to play. I understand that our dollars aren't going as far as they used to. Money is tight, and no one likes to pay more than they feel a game is worth. It's the age-old conversation that I've personally had many times about what's better in a video game, quality or quantity. For me personally, I would not mind a short, full-price game if it was the best game I'd played that year. And I certainly don't begrudge people who need their games to last them for a longer time and prefer to get more hours per dollar out of their purchases. But I'm going to be talking a lot about playtimes, and for the sake of ease, I'm going to refer to the numbers shown to me by HowLongToBeat.com. If you aren't familiar with How Long to Beat, it's an excellent resource for both tracking your games and how long it took you to play them, as well as just researching whether or not you have time to play a game before the next title you're looking forward to is releasing. They use a lot of crowdsourced data, and they let you know how long it takes to beat the main story, how long it will take you if you do the side missions on top of that, and all the way up until how long it'll take you on average if you want to 100% the game. Now, this isn't a sponsored video or anything. I just think that How Long to Beat is a really good website, and I use it frequently myself. I would really encourage you to check it out if that's something that you're really interested in. So, according to How Long to Beat, the original Assassin's Creed had a main story length of 15 hours. If you factored in side missions, you're looking at a total of 20 to 21 hours. Assassin's Creed 2 took that formula and bumped both of those numbers up for about 5 hours. And the subsequent games that came after them, Brotherhood and Revelations, the spin-offs of Assassin's Creed 2, took a few hours less. This trend of 10 to 20 hour games continued throughout Assassin's Creed 3. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, Assassin's Creed Rogue, Unity, and then Syndicate. Now, in my opinion, where things started going sideways, at least for me and a lot of other people I have talked to, is with Assassin's Creed Origins in 2017. Now, there were some other things that people didn't like about the gameplay systems that may have pushed some people away from playing Origins, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Origins takes an average of 30 hours to beat and more than 52 hours if you want to complete all the side missions. This doesn't seem terrible on its face, and it's really not. It's double the amount of time that the original Assassin's Creed took, but it's the beginning of a slippery slope for the series. Because 1 year later, Assassin's Creed Odyssey came out and boasted a 45-hour playtime, with over 80 hours needed if you wanted to do all the side missions. Now, that's already a massive jump. But when you add in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the newest mainline entry, the main story length increases to 60 hours, and an additional 40 if you want to complete the side missions as well. Okay, now let's take that back and compare that to Origins, which was only 2 entries prior, and we're looking at literally doubling the time for just the main story. If you compare it to where the series began, it's literally 4 times as long as the original Assassin's Creed. Now, to reiterate what I said earlier, if you're someone who likes super long games, or you only play a few games a year, that's totally fine, and you probably love what Ubisoft has been doing with the Assassin's Creed series. But it's not for me. I don't like it. Just like I don't like that snake. I like to be able to play as many games as possible while still seeing most everything inside of them. Now let's talk about the size and scope of the maps. Obviously, how large the world is and how many things there are to do inside of it are part of why these games take so much longer to play through. I love huge games, and I've played a lot of them. But they're games like Breath of the Wild, or Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, and pretty much every Elder Scrolls game that's ever existed. I was even hooked on No Man's Sky for a while, and that game is practically infinite. But those games are generational games in my opinion. They aren't games that come out every year, and they aren't games that started out so small. So to see just how small we're talking about, let's look at some size comparisons of the maps. And yes, I have seen those videos out there that do a really nice job of showing you the actual map and zooming back and showing you how nice the next one is. I'm going to be real with you, I don't have any idea how to do any of that stuff. And I don't want to steal anybody else's work. So for me, you're just going to get some squares, I guess. A couple quick things I forgot to mention. I know that some of these games have multiple maps, but for the sake of convenience in this video, I only show one of them. Also, I got many of these maps from a website called mapgenie.io. You should check them out. Assassin's Creed 1 had a map size of 0.13 kilometers squared. Assassin's Creed 2 more than quadrupled that size, with Florence and Venice combining for a map size of 0.67 kilometers squared. The next 2 games, Brotherhood and Revelations, came in at 0.94 and 1.41 kilometers squared, respectively. Assassin's Creed 3's maps combined to make it 2.31 kilometers squared, and Black Flag came next at 235 kilometers squared. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yes, the 4th game technically is the largest map in the series, but we all know that there's a lot of water to talk about, and not all of it's playable. There are important things there, but some of it you're just traversing over. Rogue is another game that had water and came in at 70 kilometers squared, while Syndicate shrunk that back down to 3.7 kilometers squared, and Unity brought it back down even further in the right direction for me at 1.41 kilometers squared. Okay, now we get on to Origins. This is the game I identified beginning the slippery slope earlier. It comes in at a whopping 80 kilometers squared, with, not far behind it, Valhalla at 120 kilometers squared. Topping it all off is Odyssey at 256 kilometers squared. Now, my point is not to say that each game was bigger than the last, because that's just not true. Odyssey came out before Valhalla, but it's obviously larger. My point is that the more recent Assassin's Creed games are incredibly more massive than the earlier ones. In fact, Assassin's Creed Valhalla's map completely hides the maps of Assassin's Creed 1, Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, and Assassin's Creed 3 all put together. And honestly, you could probably throw some more in there. I just noticed those off the top of my head. So look, I don't want to explore every inch of the earth when I play a game. And certainly, you don't have to go to every inch of these maps either. But the scale of the games contributes to the length of the games, and people who want smaller, shorter games are going to be pushed away from giant, sprawling, lengthy games like Valhalla and Odyssey. And I am one of those people. Okay, I've dragged this out a while, and sorry, it's going to be a little longer. We'll talk about Assassin's Creed Mirage soon and how I think it can help the series. But first, let's talk about the gameplay and the differences between the earlier games and the newer games. In the early Assassin's Creed games, you were stealthy and, for a lack of a better word, assassin-y. You hid behind carts of hay. You blended into carts in order to attack people without them knowing you were around. You ran along rooftops to stay out of sight, and you just quietly subdued your foes in order to remain hidden. Jump forward to the newer Assassin's Creed games, and your combat is on full display for everyone to see. Now, I understand, games change and they morph and they grow with their player base, but in a series with the name Assassin in the title, don't you think there should be some stealthiness there? What's next? A game called Hitman with a fully automatic rifle, and the Hitman is just shooting down everybody he sees and the crap... Never mind. Now, I'm sure the player base was getting tired of the same old formula, but that's also attributed to the fact that they were releasing games basically every single year, and like we talked about before, the games were just getting bigger and more expansive. There's also the change in how you acquired skills. It grew more massive as well. Back in the early games, in order to acquire new skills, we actually had to learn them by completing missions. Each story mission would teach you a new way to sneak or to assassinate, and the payoff felt so much better to me. On the flip side, the newer Assassin's Creed games have moved to a format where you earn points and have to unlock skills manually. Here's a screenshot of Valhalla's completed skill tree. See the difference? These later games have become more RPGs than assassination simulators, and that's not what many fans of the early entries in the series want. All I'm saying is that more is not necessarily better, and for people who, like me, fell in love with a stealthy series that had some intricacies but was mostly pretty straightforward, we don't necessarily want to have access to a machine gun, if you know what I mean. Now, don't get me wrong, people are absolutely loving the new formula, and it's obvious because the sales numbers say it's obvious. In fact, Valhalla was not only the fastest selling game in the series, but also the highest earning entry in the franchise based on Ubisoft's own reporting to their investors. But I contend that they could be selling even more, and apparently, someone at Ubisoft is listening, because Assassin's Creed Mirage has been announced, and they're speaking my language. Okay, I told you we'd talk about Mirage eventually, and now we're here. Ubisoft announced Assassin's Creed Mirage in September of 2022, though like all of their games, it had been leaked before that. Mirage originally started out as an expansion for Valhalla, but they decided to spin it off into a more standalone release. Now, where they were in development and when they made that decision is anybody's guess, but it would boggle my mind to know that they were thinking about yet another expansion on top of the already gigantic game that Valhalla is. In a recent interview with Games Radar, Stéphane Boudin, a creative director at Ubisoft, said they have been listening to fans of the series who want to see it return to a smaller, more streamlined experience. He said, quote, "We started hearing the desire for a character-driven story focused on the core pillars of the first Assassin's Creed on a more intimate scale. It resonates with us, and that was the starting point of the project." He also went on to say to Games Radar that, quote, "With its more condensed scope and clear focus on Basim and his coming-of-age story, our main goal with Mirage is to provide a total immersion in 9th century Baghdad, and we wanted this game to be a standalone game that everyone could enjoy." Boudin also went on to say that they've reworked stealth tools like smoke bombs and throwing knives. You know, weapons an assassin would use. Now look, I don't know if Ubisoft is actually in any danger of going out of business anytime soon. I think they've got a lot of issues going on, and certainly an acquisition could happen during that time, but that's something we can talk about on a different video. And hopefully to them, it's clear that their big games like Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, The Division, and so many more are just not appealing to the same group they used to be appealing to. It's okay for companies and game series to change, but a little bit goes a long way for those who are looking for a throwback to the days of old. So, could Assassin's Creed Mirage bring me back to the series? I sure hope so. Possibly even bring me back to Ubisoft as a whole if they do entries like this in some of their other games that I feel have gotten too bloated. But what about you? What do you feel? Do you like the more open world games? 100 hours to play the game, so many things to do? Or do you want to go back to the old, more streamlined games where you have a direct story and there's some side missions? But either way, whatever your preference is, let me know down in the comments. We'll talk about it there. Thanks for watching and see you next time.